All right, today we have a 2004 Nissan Titan. We are going to be replacing the rear brake pads and the rear rotors. It's not a real difficult job, so just about anybody should be able to do this. What we will do is first get it up in the air and get the rear wheels off. Now if you're doing this in the driveway, you just lift it up or jack it up and support it on jack stands and take the rear wheels off. So we'll see you in a second under the truck. What you're looking at here are the basic tools that we'll need for this job. It's actually a pretty simple job. All we're going to need, this is a 10mm wrench. You can use the socket also. A flathead screwdriver, a hammer. Now this is it's kind of a specialty tool. It's a brake caliper piston compressor. If you don't have one of these, you can use a C-clamp instead, is a really common one, or a big pair of pliers. There's all kinds of alternatives. You don't need this specific tool. Some brake clean and the brake lubricant. So that's all you really need for this job. So we'll go ahead and show you how to use those and get these brakes changed. Actually, the very first thing I did, as soon as I got the wheel off, I sprayed the hub around the brake rotor. Reason for that is these can get rusty and seized in here. So I sprayed it with some good rust penetrant, and I'm just going to let that soak while I take the calipers off. Our next step, you have two 10mm bolts back here that hold the caliper in place. So I'm just going to go ahead and take those out. Okay, now with our brake caliper bolts out, our next step is to actually get the caliper off. The way that works is you've got this little retaining clip here on the pad, and all you really have to do is kind of push that down and wiggle it off. Now this is why we had the screwdriver. Kind of pry on it and it'll pop out. And there we go. Now you do not want the caliper to hang, because you'll damage this brake hose if you let the caliper hang from the brake hose. So now our new brake pads also came with new shims. So I can go ahead and knock these guys off of here. We'll be replacing those as well. And now, to get the rotor off, if it's seized, if it's stuck on there, which it probably will be like ours is, easiest way, just take a hammer and hit the outside of the rotor. Now, you want to be careful if you're not replacing the rotor. You can damage it by doing this. But if you're replacing the rotor, you can just smack it anywhere, because it doesn't matter if you hurt it. Oh. And it came off with one hit. So there's our rotor. Now you can see the axle seal in here is leaking pretty badly. So we actually do have a different video on it. The customer is aware of it. We have a video of us checking the differential fluid in this exact truck even, because that's leaking. So we'll remind him that he should get that done as soon as possible. But for now, we'll go ahead and continue with our brake job. Okay, so we consulted with the owner of the truck. At this time, he does not want to do the rear axle seal. So we're just going to continue with the brakes. The only downfall is there is the potential of getting gear lube on the new brake pads, but nothing we can do about that at this time. What we're going to do next is go ahead and put our new brake pad shims on here. What these do is just slides over and on there like that. And same with this one. They just snap in place. And I'll go ahead and take off the old brake pads off the old caliper. The way these work, you've got these, they've got like a little catch tab almost thing. I don't know what you'd call it, but there we go. And you have to kind of push it in and then down at the same time, and you'll see it'll pop out. And then at this point, let's use the screwdriver and kind of pry them out of here. So there's one. And this one, the inner pad is a little bit different. It's got little teeth that actually reach down into the caliper piston there. So that's our other one. Now when you look at the old versus new pad, you want to make sure that all the sides line up. Like this particular pad is only for the driver's side of this truck. It's got this clip and it matches, you know, it just matches perfectly. So you want to make sure you get the correct side when you're matching up the parts. So just wanted to show you that. Our next step is to compress the piston on the caliper. And this is where you can use either large pliers. I also have a pair of large C-clamp vice grips that will do this. There's many ways of doing it, but you just basically put pressure on the piston and it slides in, and eventually it will go flat against the caliper like that. And at that point, that's all there is. Now these particular brake pads already have a real nice anti-noise shim on them. There's no additional lubricant or anything that goes on the back of the pad. So what we do is just slide this in place, and these teeth, you just kind of push down on it and wiggle it, and there we go. And eventually it'll pop in place. And for the outer pad, what you do is just kind of line up those notches with these bumps. I don't know what you call them. You just push them on, and you'll see, you know it's good when this area right here is flush. So at this point, this caliper is ready to go back on. Now, before we put the rotor on, next thing we're going to do is put some brake lubricant on these caliper shim slide pieces. And you want to be real careful with what type of lubricant you use. You want to use lubricant specifically for brakes. And what we'll do, we'll just put a little dab all along this slide here, on the top and bottom. This will ensure that the brake pads slide freely on these things when you press and release the brake pedal. All right, so we took our new rotor and washed it with soap and water to get all the factory anti-rust oil off of it, at least on the outer surface here. And all you do is literally just slide the rotor over the hub. And our last step is to reinstall the brake caliper. Now when you do this, you'll have to pull out on these caliper slide pins just to get everything to line up once you go to seat it all in. So what we'll do is slide it over. You can see here this bottom pad is designed to fit right over that notch. And then I'll reach back here and pull out on this caliper slide to give us a little clearance. And then everything just slides together, just like so. And we'll go ahead and put our 2 bolts back in. All right, now we'll go over and do the other side. All right, so now we're just going to do the exact same thing on the passenger side of the truck. It is an identical procedure, so we'll just go through the exact same steps. Well, unfortunately, this poor little fella got himself wrapped up in the brakes, and more often, it actually happens quite often working on a car. You'll find a poor little creature that's decided to take up residence in the wrong spot. Anyway, he gave us a little jump when he fell out, but yeah, it's just something you'll come across. All right, so we got this side all put back together, so now we're completely done with the rear brakes on this truck. All we have to do now is put our wheels back on, and when we drop it down, one important thing to always remember, do not try to drive it right away. Make sure you pump up the brake pedal a couple times before you try to drive it, because this piston has to come back out a little ways, and you won't have a brake pedal immediately. So when we put it down on the ground, we're just going to pump the pedal a few times before we drive it. But that is all that's involved on replacing the rear pads and rotors on a Nissan Titan. Now remember to check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/apdty. Also subscribe to us here on YouTube. We're forever putting out new videos. And on Google+. Make sure you go on there and give us a plus. So thanks for watching. Take care. Put the rotor on, you take the rotor off. Put the rotor on and you shake it all about.